Key learning 4, you get the sponsor you deserve. Years ago, I was working on a very, very large project, and we had this visionary CEO who wasn't a big fan of steering committees. So what he said was, why don't we experiment for 3 months and put steering committees in and then poll these 9 program directors as to whether they want to keep their steering committee. 3 months in, we did. And what we found was that 3 program directors wanted to keep their steering committee. They saw them as vital. 3 were sort of neutral, and 3 did not want their steering committees at all. Here's the problem. They all had the same steering committee. There was 1 or 2 members different, but that wasn't a factor. So the paradox was, why did they have such a different opinion? And of course the answer was, it depended on the behaviour of the project and program directors. Some saw the steering committee as a source of help, as a body to collaborate with. Some were sort of neutral on that, and some simply treated the steering committees via ambushing. For example, if you don't do this, then I can't deliver the project. In other words, they were treating the steering committee in almost an adversarial way. So what I learned from that was the behaviour, your behaviour as a project manager, seriously influences your sponsor's behaviour. And we've talked about this throughout the entire series. Never ambush your sponsor. At the front of the project, have an agreement with the sponsor that the sponsor is your most important stakeholder. You will never deceive them. You will never not tell them what's going on. They'll always be the first to know. I've seen some awesome examples of this. I was in a room, I still remember it was many years ago, where a sponsor came in. I was with the team, sponsor came in, very senior guy, number 2 in the organisation, and proceeded to yell at them in a way that I've not seen since I started in the public service in the 60s. Lots of bad words, lots of words I could not repeat here. Screaming at them and ultimately saying, if I had my choice, I'd fire you right now, and then he walked out. When I asked the team what had happened, they explained that that sponsor had found out at an executive meeting that his project that they were running was way behind schedule, and they hadn't told him. In other words, the team had not been declaring the project amber for some months when in fact it was red, that sort of thing. When I asked them why hadn't they told him the project was in trouble, this is absolutely true story. One of them said, well, we knew if we told him we're red, he'd yell at us. And this is absolutely true. The program manager went over and said, and Rob, you just saw him do that. So this sponsor had been put into the self-fulfilling prophecy, what I call the bad parent syndrome, where the behaviour of the team and the project manager had forced this person into a position where literally the only thing you do is just react, right? They got the sponsor they deserved there, and by the way, seen that too many times. The 5th and final key learning that I want to share with you is probably the most difficult and perhaps the most important. It's called crossing the line. Don't ever cross the line. What I mean by that is, as a PM, your job is to focus on your team and focus on the processes, the tools, the methods of project management. Your job is to execute the project, but your job is not to own the project. And this is a very, very common behavior. You start thinking of the project at night time. People criticize the project and you start getting negative, and you start feeling bad about the criticism, you reject it. And what's happening is you're moving from owning the process of project management to actually owning the project. It becomes your project. You start using language like, it's my project. Once you start doing that, you've now crossed the line. You've ceased being this professional, this person who focuses on what do I need to do to enable the project to happen, to what do I need to do to own the project and make sure it works. In other words, it's a very subtle line, and many of you watching this video will have actually done it. And you know that where you get to, you start losing your objectivity. You start focusing better on the wrong things, stopping attacks on the project, etc., etc. Jerry Weinberg, who I mentioned earlier, used to have this great statement: before you solve any problem, step 0 is to figure out whose problem it is. As a project manager, you will have many problems in projects, which if you examine them professionally, clinically, you'd realize there was nothing you could do to stop it. This is when you start owning up to the fact that you've got to go to your sponsor and your stakeholders and look for help. But if you don't keep that dispassionate view, you'll start seeing these problems as attacks on you, or problems you're going to try and solve, which in fact, rationally, you can't, because you see, you're now owning the project. Please don't do that. I cannot say this enough. I've seen too many people ruin their careers by crossing that line, falling in love with their project. The best project manager I've ever met in my life is a guy called Chris. I won't embarrass him by giving him his full name. But I asked him once years ago, how did he survive? Because he was doing all these really, really complex projects, very nasty projects, if I can use that language. And he looked at me calmly and said, Rob, people say, what about this? What about that? What about this? And he'd say, I have no opinion. I have no opinion. I am the project manager. I can help you find the answers to that, but my job is to manage the project, not have opinions about what the project is doing. If that sort of makes sense. Do not cross that line ever. I want to thank you all for joining me, and I wish you all a great project management career. After 50 years of this career, I would never have chosen another one. I'm still learning, I'm still enjoying it, and that's a really good thing to hold on to.